Okay, so I kind of want to sit down and actually cover the first actual crossover that was ever done in X-Men comics. Now, when I say crossover, I really mean more of the first X-Men crossover, using all the different X-Men titles around that time to tell one single story arc. And that would be Uncanny X-Men, X-Factor, New Mutants. You also had some other books as well, like Power Pack, Thor, and also Daredevil. But this was the first time we had an actual X-Men crossover, better known as the Mutant Massacre. Now, this was huge, and the reason why, because we got a brand new group of bad guys going into the tunnels of the Morlocks, and of course, killing off a huge chunk of them. Now remember, when it comes to the Morlocks, they were a group of mutants who were technically living in the sewers. And the reason why? Because of their appearance. Because sometimes when it comes to being a mutant, you may look normal, but you do have powers. But in some cases, you might get powers, but your body appearance will also change as well as soon as your X gene is activated. And so when it came to the Morlocks, literally all of them, except like maybe a handful, all looked different, and they all began to live in the sewers, away from the humans, but also away from other mutants as well. But there's a new group out there known as the Marauders. For some unknown reason, they were sent into the sewers to kill off the Morlocks. And so getting into today's storyline, we do pick up with two characters, which would be Richard and Tommy. Now, unfortunately, this is going to be Richard's only appearance ever in Marvel Comics. And the reason why? Because, well, he's going to die right here in the opening pages of this story arc. Now, when it comes to Richard, he is struck from behind by some kind of blast. Now, he's not dead, but he is on the verge of dying. But he does tell Tommy to hand over his weapon because he believes as long as he has his weapon, he should be able to fight against the people who is trying to kill him off. And of course, it is the Marauders. Now, when it comes to Richard, he's not really a Morlock. Matter of fact, he works for the Hellfire Club. But either way, though, he just been killed off by the Marauders. Now, when it comes to Tommy, she does run off thinking that she'll be able to get away from the people who is trying to kill her off. Now, when it comes to Tommy, she does have the mutant ability to change her body into a 2D shape. Literally, she goes flat like a 2D shape to be able to squeeze through tight doors if she needs to. Now, she is actually a Morlock, but either way, after seeing her friend Richard get killed, she's trying her best to get away. Now, luckily for her, she is able to sneak onto a train where she does believe that she should be possibly safe. We then jump over to Dazzler. Now, when it comes to Dazzler, I do want to mention that at this point in time, she's still a pop star, but not as big as she used to be. Because originally, she was a big time pop star when she first appeared in Marvel Comics. Except when the world found out that she was a mutant, well, we already know what happened there. She lost her popularity. Now, she was able to join a new group, but of course, she used a fake name as a way to hide her true identity, to also hide that she is a mutant, but to also still have the ability to perform. Now, when it comes to Dazzler, while she's in the bathroom, that is the moment where she is confronted by a character known as Malice. Now, when it comes to Malice, she's really more a mutant that's pure energy. She has to take over somebody's body if she wants to be able to actually walk around and do things in the world. But of course, at this point in time, she is a bad guy who's also part of the Marauders. And for some reason, she was sent after Dazzler. And so while you have Dazzler in the bathroom just minding her business, well, out of nowhere, she gets attacked by Malice, who tries to take over her body. We then pick up with Rogue, who is currently trying to find Rachel Summers, the daughter of Cyclops and Jean Grey, from an alternate timeline. Now, when it comes to Rogue, the reason why she is trying to find Rachel is because in the previous story arc, matter of fact, the one that came before this one, the X-Men fought against Nimrod. Now, at the end of that battle, Rachel just went missing, and they have no idea where in the world she had went off to. And so it's Rogue trying her best to find Rachel. Now, the rest of the section, when it comes to Rogue looking for Rachel, is honestly not that important. As a matter of fact, when it comes to Rogue, she does some superhero stuff here and there, but she also goes to the mall to, buy a few outfits, get her makeup done, but then she gets run out of the mall because she is a mutant. And really, that's it for Rogue at this point in the storyline. But when we jump over to Colossus, and matter of fact, he's back at the X Mansion, we kind of find out that Rachel is not the only person missing. Matter of fact, when Colossus talks to his little sister Illyana, we kind of find out that Nightcrawler is also missing as well, thanks to the battle against Nimrod in the previous story arc. And so currently, Illyana is very worried about Nightcrawler and Rachel, but it's also Colossus saying that, don't worry, sooner or later, we're going to find them. But when we check up with Kitty Pryde, we kind of find out that she is trying to turn Cerebro back on. But when you have Colossus and Illyana walk into the room, we are actually informed about the idea that Kitty Pryde is very upset at Rachel because she believes that Rachel had left the team in the middle of the battle against Nimrod. And so for Kitty, that's a huge no-no because the X-Men went out of their way to help Rachel, even though Rachel should not be in this timeline at all. But at the same time, they're still good people. They took her in. And then in Nimrod, she had left the team behind in the middle of that battle. And so for Kitty Pryde, she's very upset with Rachel because she believes that Rachel could be the reason why that Nightcrawler could possibly be dead. But now we have to talk about X Factor. See, when it came to X Factor, they were a new group around this point in time in Marvel Comics. And matter of fact, when it came to X Factor, it was the original 5 X-Men coming back together to make their own team. Cyclops, Angel, Beast, Iceman, Jean Grey. Now, the reason why they came together to make a new team is because they felt like the new X-Men team were no longer trying to follow Charles Xavier's dream. And so they made their own team to make sure his dream comes to life. Now, when it comes to X Factor, they also pretend to be mutant hunters. Because they look like humans, they try to pretend to be mutant hunters to go after mutants, but in reality, they're helping those mutants get away and somewhere safe. But either way, though, they're trying their best to be the better version of the X-Men around this point in time to, again, make sure that Charles Xavier's dream comes to life. And so you have X Factor currently in New York in front of the Hellfire Club's place. But they also see Magneto walking into the place. And this leads into our next conversation, which is Magneto. See, when it comes to Magneto, around this point in time, he was actually a good guy. Matter of fact, he was the leader of the X-Men, the leader of the school. He was the headmaster of the school. Charles Xavier stepped down. And this was a huge thing for X-Men comics because it really showed a huge character development for Magneto around this point in time. Now, when it comes to Magneto, he's having a meeting with the Hellfire Club because in the previous story arc, it wasn't just Nimrod the X-Men fought against, they also fought against the Hellfire Club as well. Either way, though, when it comes to Magneto, he finds out that he was called here by Sebastian Shaw, the leader of the Hellfire Club. And the reason why, because Sebastian Shaw feels like the way America is going when it comes to mutants, the X-Men and the Hellfire Club should join forces to basically defend themselves against the American government and their hatred towards the mutant race. Now, you already know when it comes to Magneto, he's not down with the idea of working with the Hellfire Club, especially right after what happened in the previous story arc. But then we jump over to Colossus, Kitty, and also Illyana. where we kind of find out that they were able to locate Nightcrawler thanks to Cerebro. Now here comes the problem though, because when they do find Nightcrawler, he is alive, except he's being chased after by a group of people who basically hate him because, once again, he is a mutant, but also because he looks like a demon, and so they are chasing him down. Now, luckily for Nightcrawler, Colossus, Kitty, and also Ileana appear just in time to save his life. Now, it does lead into the usual X-Men conversation where you have one of the X-Men basically talk about the idea of how wrong it is to go after someone because they are different, because they're not just like you. And of course, you have the crowd how to fight back against the X-Men, but they do back down once you have Kitty Pryde continue on with her speech. Now, once they do leave, you do have the X-Men take Nightcrawler back over to the mansion to hopefully get him healed up. Now, when we do pick up with Wolverine and Storm, we kind of find out the real reason why Rachel is currently missing. And we kind of find out that Wolverine had to stop Rachel in the previous story arc because she was trying to kill off the Black Queen of the Hellfire Club. Now, he does feel bad about the idea of harming her, but he had no choice. And when it comes to Storm, she said, no, you made the right choice, because Rachel was going to kill off the Black Queen. And we as X-Men, we have to realize that killing is wrong. And so, of course, she tells Wolverine that what he did in the previous story arc to stop Rachel was not the wrong move at all. But then we have to pick up with Tommy. Now remember, Tommy was the character we saw earlier that was on the run trying to get away from the Marauders who were trying to kill her and her friend Richard. Now they did kill off her friend Richard, but she was still able to get away. Well, she thought she did, because as soon as she arrived to the Morlock tunnels, the Marauders come from behind, killing her off. And of course, they're not done yet. They're going to continue their killing spree by going after the rest of the Morlocks. Now, when we jump into X Factor number 9, the second chapter 2, the Mutant Massacre, we do pick up with Freedom Force. Now, when it comes to Freedom Force, they were a very interesting team in Marvel Comics. Now, most of the members of this team was actually part of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants: Mystique, Pyro, Blob, Destiny, and Avalanche. Now, Spider-Woman Julia Carpenter is also part of this team, but the thing was, originally she was not. It was just these characters. Now, the reason why they're called Freedom Force because they work for the government. And so basically, the government told them, if you work for us, we'll go ahead and clear you for all your past crimes. And so they were down. But they have to go after different power beings the government wants them to bring in. And currently they're going after two particular people. And that would be Rusty and Sally. Now, these were newer characters in Marvel Comics. As a matter of fact, they have not even got their code names yet. Now, when it comes to Sally, later on in Marvel Comics, she'll be called Skids. And when it comes to Rusty, he'll be called Fire Fist. Now, when it comes to Rusty, with his name Fire Fist, you already know that he is able to control fire. But on top of that, he is able to make himself light on fire as well, very similar to the Human Torch. And when it comes to Skid, she's kind of able to create different kinds of force field. Now, when it comes to Freedom Force, they're trying to arrest Rusty, but to also arrest Skid. Really, they just want Rusty. They don't want Sally at all, but she's just there to protect the man that she cares for. Now, when we do jump over to X Factor, they're trying their best to actually find, well, Rusty. Now, when it comes to this issue, even though it's part of the Mutant Massacre storyline, it's also picking up from a previous issue where Rusty was on the run from Freedom Force. Either way, when it comes to X Factor, they're trying their best to find him. Now, the reason why I want to cover this section right here is to really show you guys that when it came to X Factor, the world believed that they were a group of a group of humans who were going out of their way to hunt down mutants. But in reality, they were a group of mutants trying to help out their fellow mutants get somewhere better for their lives. Now, with that being said, we also kind of find out a lot of their fans around this point in time did not even like other superheroes as well. And so when they looked at X Factor, they believed it was just 5 regular humans using technology as a way to hunt down mutants. But in reality, they're helping mutants out. But getting back over to Rusty and Sally, who are currently trying their best to get away from Freedom Force, unfortunately, they do get caught up in Spider-Woman's web. And so with them being caught in her web and nowhere to go, it does look like Freedom Force might say mission accomplished, except something else happens. And that is the public. See, when it comes to most of the members of Freedom Force, well, they're mutants. Well-known mutants. And so you actually do have the public begin to attack Freedom Force. Now, even though they work for the government, it kind of shows how the public really does hate mutants a lot. It does not matter if mutants are working for the government at all. If you are a mutant, the public basically hates your guts. Now, luckily, X Factor had arrived in time, and Jean Grey does use her powers as a way to defend the Freedom Force team from being attacked by the crowd of people. Except with all that happening, Rusty and Sally were able to get away, and you had Sally take Rusty into the Morlock tunnels. Now, we do pick up with a character known as Artie. Now, when it comes to Artie, he was also a new character around this point in time in X Factor comics. And when it came to Artie, he had the ability to project different kind of images as a way to talk to people. Because unfortunately, when he gained his mutant ability, it did change his body appearance, but it also made him mute, but also he could not write either. And so he had to rely on his ability to project different images as a way to talk to people. But on top of that, he's also able to tap into other people's minds to see what's going on with them, but to also project what they have going on in their minds as well. And so when it comes to Artie, he was able to tap into the mind of his dear friend Rusty, because Artie, just like Rusty, was also a trainee at X Factor as well. And so once he realized that Rusty was in danger, he felt like he had to tell somebody, or at least go out of his way to help save his best friend Rusty. And once you have Artie being able to reach the Morlock tunnels, hoping to find Rusty, well, he finds Leech instead. Now, when it comes to Leech, he's also a Morlock, but he has the mutant ability to technically cancel out other mutant abilities. So, for example, if you try to use your powers, they're not going to work around Leech. Now, with that being said, Leech realized that Artie is a kid just like him, except can't talk. And so you have Leech take Artie to go see Caliban. Now, when it comes to Caliban, he's also a Morlock, also a mutant, but he has the ability to detect other mutants nearby. Now, when it comes to our 3 characters, while they're getting the chance to know each other, they hear a loud scream. And this brings us back into the Mutant Massacre storyline, because Rusty and also Sally were able to find a dead body. And this reminds us that this is the Mutant Massacre storyline. Now, I do want to mention one thing. When it comes to the Mutant Massacre storyline, X Factor and X-Men are both going to be in the tunnels, but they're going to be on opposite ends. They're not really going to run into each other at all in most of the chapters of this event. And so they have no idea the other team is actually in the tunnels as well. But it also kind of shows how crazy the tunnels are when it comes to the Morlocks' home underneath New York. Either way, getting back over to Rusty and Sally, Freedom Force was able to catch up to them. And, well, they're trying to arrest Rusty and Sally. Now, luckily for Rusty, you do have X Factor arrive in their brand new suits around this point in time to fight against Freedom Force. And this fight does last for a few pages, but of course, it does give us a lot of action. And honestly, it's cool to see X Factor kind of show that they have fought against these different kind of characters before, and so they know how to handle these different kind of characters so easily. And so you have X Factor being able to defeat Freedom Force and send them home packing. Except there is one tiny problem though. Rusty does get injured in the middle of the battle between X Factor and also Freedom Force. Now, when it comes to Cyclops, he does tell Angel and Jean Grey, Marvel Girl, to go ahead and take Rusty back over to their base to give him some medical help. Now, Cyclops, Iceman, and Beast, they are going to stay behind. And the reason why? To find Artie. Remember, Artie came down to the sewers to hopefully find his best friend Rusty. We already know he didn't find Rusty, but something else happened when it came to Artie. And so we're kind of wondering if Artie is okay. Either way, when it comes to X Factor, they got word that Artie was down here looking for Rusty. And so you have Cyclops, Iceman, and Beast said, we'll stay behind and continue to search for Artie. Now, when it comes to the next chapter, we do jump back over to Uncanny X-Men, where we do pick up with issue number 211, where we do pick up with the Marauders. Now, this is actually our first time seeing these characters. Earlier, we only saw them in the shadows, but now we get the chance to actually see them. Now, I'm not going to sit down here and go through every single character right now. All you need to know is that they are continuing their rampage through the Morlock tunnels. They're going after different members of the Morlocks and just killing them off left and right to really show us that this is really going to be a massacre. And the thing is, they're also mutants. And so it's kind of like, why in the world is this group right now going after their own race, but enjoying the idea of killing off people who belong to their own race? Now, we do jump back over to the X-Men. Now, when we do, it is currently the X-Men just at home minding their business, doing different things as a way to pass the day on. Except when it comes to Wolverine and Nightcrawler, while they're outside, they are confronted by a mole-like character who is technically a Morlock, who came all the way over here to ask the X-Men for help, to inform the X-Men what is currently happening in the tunnels right now with the Morlocks being killed off by the Marauders. Now, the X-Men do get confirmation when it comes to Psylocke, Betsy Braddock. Now, I do want to mention one thing. Around this time, she was actually just a random person at the mansion because she had not joined the X-Men, nor has she joined the New Mutants. It was kind of like wondering what to do with this character, but she does use her psychic abilities as a way to read the mind of the mole-like character to get confirmation that what he said earlier is actually true. The Morlocks are currently being attacked by the Marauders. Now, when it comes to the X-Men, they have not met the Marauders at all. They were a brand new team that were created for this particular event right here. Now, once the X-Men do get confirmation, they do use Illyana's powers to teleport right over to the Morlock tunnels to begin to take down the enemies in the actual tunnels. Now, as soon as the X-Men arrived in the tunnels, unfortunately, they are confronted by some members of the Marauders, which of course gives them an actual battle. Now, this battle does not last that long. Matter of fact, only lasts for about 3 pages. Now, when it comes to the X-Men, they were able to take out at least one of the members of the Marauders, but unfortunately, Nightcrawler got seriously injured. But the thing is, Nightcrawler hasn't truly healed up since his last battle against Nimrod. And so with him coming here to this mission, he wasn't technically ready for it yet. But of course, he did not want to let the X-Men down. Now, he was able to take out one of the members of the Marauders, but at the end of the day, he still got hurt. Seriously hurt. And so Illyana had to go back with Nightcrawler to the mansion. And you have the X-Men tell her, don't come back here, because if things are this bad here, you as a child are in the worst spot ever. So take Nightcrawler back to the mansion and give him some medical help. Now you're wondering why Magneto is not here. Because he's the headmaster, Storm said he should stay behind to protect the other team at the mansion, the New Mutants, the younger group of kids. Now, the rest of the third chapter is really more of the X-Men going down deeper into the tunnels to hopefully find some survivors. But unfortunately, they just keep running into different members of the Marauders. And so the X-Men have to fight their way to see if anybody has survived the attack of the Marauders. But the problem is, though, the Marauders, when they find somebody they want to kill, they make sure that person is actually dead. Now, there is a moment where you have Wolverine and Storm almost get hit by Cyclops' optic beam. Now, we're left to believe that Cyclops had no idea that Wolverine and Storm are down here in the tunnels, but at the same time, Wolverine knows now that Cyclops, Beast, and Iceman are here in the tunnels as well. But the question is, why? We're also left to believe that X-Factor and X-Men, there's some bad blood between the two teams, especially with the idea that X-Factor believes that the new X-Men team is not doing a good job when it comes to making sure that Charles Xavier's dream comes to life. Also, when it comes to X-Factor, they don't like the idea of the X-Men working alongside with Magneto. Either way, as the book continues on, you have the X-Men continue to fight against the Marauders. And matter of fact, when it comes to the final battle for today's video, we actually do pick up with the X-Men fighting against the Marauders once again. Except this time, I want to focus more on Rogue and Kitty Pryde. And the reason why, because one of the members of the Marauders, Harpoon, was going to shoot Rogue. Now, luckily for Rogue, Kitty Pryde stepped in to protect her, and so Kitty Pryde got shot. Now, Kitty Pryde is not dead or badly injured, but we come to find out that her powers are no longer working at all. She can no longer phase like she usually does. Now, here's the thing, because when it comes to the X-Men, they can't really try to sit down and try to figure that out. They have other things to take care of, like the Marauders. And so you have Storm to the X-Men to go ahead and take all survivors back over to the mansion. But when they come back to the tunnels of the Morlock, Storm wants to find one of the members of the Marauders to interrogate. But the rest of the members of the Marauders is Storm saying, if you find someone else, you can go ahead and kill them off. And this is where we are going to end today's comic book video. So please leave me a like down below and subscribe. But guys, see y'all next time. Later.